like I don't think you should do anything in the gym that looks like a golf swing. It can even mess up your kinematic sequencing. If you want to work on swinging a golf club faster, you should just use your driver because hardware and software are not always one and the same. So if you get stronger, there's specific brain exercises you can use to upgrade and teach your brain how to use the new hardware.
Welcome to the Golf Parent, where you get access to the best minds in junior golf. I'm your host, Ryan Adams, and today I'm joined by Ryan Degale, an orthopedic spine specialist and strength coach who has spent over 25 years immersed in the game of golf. Ryan is the founder of Golf and Body in Miami, where he helps golfers prevent injuries, improve mobility, and stay pain-free on and off the golf course. In this episode, we dive into the hidden dangers golf poses for the back, why so many junior golfers are training like athletes from other sports, and how that's actually leading to more injuries, plus the real keys to strength, mobility, and nutrition that can keep your young golfer healthy for the long run. You're also going to hear practical tips on cool downs, flexibility training, and how to prevent issues like scoliosis from developing. And yes, you can develop scoliosis. But before we get into it, I want to give a big shout out to our friends IJGA. Listen, golf parents, if you're even considering sending your child to a boarding school, why not send them to the best golf boarding school in the world? IJGA has it all. Their very own private golf course, access to Montverde Academy, world-class technology like PuttView and TrackMan, and a capped boarding program of students to ensure that every athlete gets the attention that they deserve. Simply put, it's the most prestigious golf boarding school in North America. So check out more information in the show description or visit www.ijga.com to learn how they can help shape your junior golfer's future. Now, let's get into the conversation with Ryan. Ryan, thanks for coming on the Golf Parent Podcast. Appreciate it.
No, it's a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to our discussion today.
So let's start right here. How dangerous is golf for the back?
That's a loaded question. It's a very good question. I'd probably say it's the most dangerous sport for golf, especially for back pain. There's a lot of side bend and rotation, and there's a lot of friction and torsion in the lower spine. And I would say that's the number one cause of ending careers. And I've seen kids, who work their entire life to go to college and, they're not really doing restorative exercise for their spine and they're lifting heavy and, their careers end early. And it's a sad thing.
Well, that's always the fear, right? Is that, I mean, because we all know somebody, or we've experienced ourselves a little bit of back pain when we're swinging the club. So maybe let's start at the beginning. Let's assume that somebody has somewhat of a fundamentals taken care of in their golf swing. So they're not doing some completely unorthodox swing. What is a common cause of the back issues that you're seeing because you work with you work with the number one junior golfer in the world, so we can't say their name, but we'll throw that out there, and a bunch of PGA guys as well. So what are you seeing is a common injury? Let's just focus on kids for right now.
I would say definitely tissue prep and the awareness of strength conditioning is so high these days. I mean, kids are in the gym, they're getting stronger, they're insanely fast. I mean, every time you turn on the TV, you see some kid at 190, 185 ball speed. I mean, you can see the NCAA coverage that's like they're just really fast, right? Maybe their goal is to get faster by using the gym, and they are achieving that, but at what risk? And so in my opinion, I feel like golfers are training like baseball players and football players, and there needs to be better awareness, especially with juniors growing up, of really how to train, master their own body weight, if you need to apply strength and just go through the different cycles. So when I'm doing cycles, you want to assess a client where first thing you need to know is if they have scoliosis, because most people don't do have scoliosis, but it's not diagnosed because they don't have symptoms. And so this is going to change a lot of the loading parameters and the corrective exercise that you have because,
Ron, I'm going to pause you there because
yeah,
are you saying most people have some form of scoliosis, or most people with scoliosis, it's undiagnosed?
both, both.
Interesting.
Yeah. So you could actually develop scoliosis as you get older. So if I have a pelvis model here actually. And so like if, this is the sacrum bone back over here. There are 36 muscle attachments to each one of these pelvic bones. Okay. And so if there is more than, say, 20% of tension, it's going to create rotational force. And so scoliosis is simply a rotation. So if you're not symmetrical in different parts of your body, and golf is not a very symmetrical sport, it can actually cause adult scoliosis, and that can cause a lot of ligament trauma. It could put a lot of stress on the system because essentially, in my opinion, back pain is a physics and geometry issue instead of just like a lack of injections and pills and stuff like that, you know?
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, you're saying that an improper swing can actually develop a form of scoliosis in golfers later in life. Did I hear that correct?
There are certain degrees, like you could
Yes,
look at a Joaquin Neiman, who has excessive side bend and rotation, but you
sure.
know, like there's no guarantee that he's going to ever have back pain. And in my opinion, every golf swing is bad for the back, but there are certain things that you can do because I'm an avid golfer and I love to play golf. You have to develop the system to yourself because you know there is a price to pay with any single sport. For instance, if you're playing tennis, you may have ACL tears or meniscus tears. With golf, it tends to be the back and the shoulder. And so what are we going to do? We're going to put in the work and develop a system how we can play without pain or symptoms versus just like, you know, this doesn't have to be that way essentially.
Huh. Okay, so going back to something you said at the beginning, you said that most of the junior golfers now are basically training like they're playing baseball or football. So they're in the gym, and I'm assuming you're implying that they're lifting heavy, they're doing a lot of kind of work to kind of get bigger and stronger so that they can swing it faster. Is the potential for injury that you're seeing, is that more because of overtraining in the gym, or is it more because they're just trying to swing it way too hard with the golf club? So it's just kind of I guess the injury that's happening through the repetitive motion of the golf swing,
We're
or
going to look
combination of
at
both.
we're going to look at the past and so we can sort of predict the future of this particular question. You know, Bernard Langer's still out there, Fred Couples, Ernie Els, all those kind of guys versus like a Jason Day or a Will Zalatoris or and these guys that are suffering from back pain, almost career-ending injuries. And so you know, awareness back in those days for, you know, heavy strength training and stuff like that was minimal. And they're still they're playing. So, you know, I think it's more of a gym thing, to be honest with you, because, you know, with golf, you're swinging something that's very light, very fast. And in the gym, you know, that's not training your nervous system to be particularly fast. Strength and speed are not always one and the same. And so golf is a power sport, right? And this, if you look at a degree at Will Zalatoris, they say I keep on going back to this because he's most probably the most recent high-profile player to take time off for a back
Sure.
injury. They say he gained like 20 pounds of weight, which is definitely not muscle because you can't as a natural lifter you can't gain 20 pounds on an off season. That will take years and years to do of real muscle. So say he gained 20 pounds, his ball speed's the same. It doesn't necessarily mean he's faster. And is this muscle mass? You know, you also have to carry 20 pounds of extra weight walking through ups and hills and stuff like that. And, you know, golf is it's an endurance sport in that aspect. And so is the 20 pounds really helping his back? Maybe. Is it going to be deteriorating some of the extra weight? You know, that's almost like you know, a runner just carrying a 20-pound back pack on, it's just going to slow them down. It's going to use energy that shouldn't be there. And the PGA Tour and the high level, you know, USGA golf, I mean, the margins are so small. I mean, you name it. So, you know,
So what would you suggest then to a parent who has, let's just say a kid who's in his mid-teens, like right around that time where you could actually start either focusing on the gym or not. So let's just say maybe 14 to 20, somewhere in that range. Would you be suggesting that that high-level junior do more mobility, strength training? Like what's the recipe, or let's say it this way, what's the do's and don'ts of taking care of your back as a junior?
honestly, you know, there's not really that many elder practitioners out there like myself. I mean, I think there's less than 160 in the world at level four. Pilates. I have a Pilates instructor full time over there who does, you know, different forms of Pilates and gyrotonics and stuff, and mastering your own body weight and efficiency of movement. It's a very cliche term, but core strength, because that's a quite complicated thing. And you're just, what's the maximal amount of reward can I get with the minimal amount of risk?
Hmm.
Now, look at the U.S. amateur champion. I forgot his name. The guy at I think ASU. I mean, he was online deadlifting 400 pounds. He already has 190 ball speed. Why are you trying to put his career at risk? You know? And you know, if
Is
he
that the
already
young
can
guy from
produce,
Spain that you're talking about?
yeah, the young guy from Spain. I
Uh,
saw it
Bella
on
Torres, or yeah, I can't remember, but
something like that. Look, I'm not trying to troll here, but like, I just honestly spit out my coffee when I saw that. I'm like, oh my gosh, this kid is just like an insane talent with 180 ball speed. What are you doing? You know what I mean? Look at the Cootie brothers, how they were racing at UT and filming it, I guess, and Both of them had like I think they tore a ligament in their wrist or had a broken bone because the wall at the end of 40 meters to brace their fall because they're racing each other. Kids, they shouldn't be competing in the gym. They should be competing on the course, and they should be mastering the way their body moves and how their nervous system works in the gym, in my opinion.
Hey, that makes a lot of, without any sort of degrees behind myself, that just makes intuitive, logical sense. Um, okay, so we got Pilates, we've got understanding core strength. Is there anything else like would you, I don't know, look at like Tai Chi or Qigong, or would you look at anything else that's more body awareness, like jujitsu even? Like what else would you throw into the
Actually
mix?
done jujitsu. I used to do a lot of jujitsu. No, jujitsu is you're probably going to tear your ACL, but
Sure, yeah, yeah.
or a rotator cuff and stuff like that. I would stay away from yoga. I have to rehab yoga instructors every year,
Really?
and
Why is
excessive
that?
because basically when you get too flexible, the joint has kind of like a fail-safe, whether it's a tendons, ligaments, or fascia, or even the muscle for that matter. And you're more susceptible to ligament tears and tendon tears if you're hypermobile because when you overstretch tissues, that's when they tear, and there's different grades to that. And versus Pilates, it's very slow, controlled. I notice like in the Aldo community, there's a lot of Pilates persons, and they're just much more conscious of form and cueing and stuff like that, in my opinion.
Huh. It makes sense. That I've never done Pilates. My
I
wife
think
does,
I
and
think calisthenics are great. If you're not crazy, if you're not doing the crazy gymnast stuff. I mean, most of the stuff that I do, because I work primarily remote, I mean, we have a yoga mat in their body weight. And there's certain ways to create tension in particular parts of the body because joints to be healthy, they need space and lubrication, right? And so the body wants to be able to transport water and blood to lubricate, say, the hip joint or the five major joints in the shoulder, stuff like that. The fascia is responsible for 80% of the intelligence when it comes to movement, which is stored in actually the hypothalamus in the brain. So the fascia has memory. It's like an organ, right?
interesting.
And so muscles are dumb pieces of meat. Long story short, the intelligence is in the tendons, ligaments, and fascia, which basically tells the engineering of the body.
There's so much to unpack here. Okay, let me see what.
Oh yeah, sorry
Let
about
me see where.
that.
No, no, not at all.
Yeah,
It's you're throwing
yeah.
a lot of great information here that I'm trying to make sure that the audience that has questions in the background, those questions are going to get answered. First things first. Calisthenics. That is simply just using body weight, so doing like burpees and like various kind of quick. Is it? What's the difference between
Body,
calisthenics and like
body,
high
body.
intensity,
Well,
like
it depends
hits?
on the programming of it. I wouldn't really recommend. I think different get understanding like pull-up variations because a lot of people get the shoulder wrong, in my opinion, because of the bony structures of the shoulder are not as robust as the hip. It's a ball and socket joint, so you have a large ball with a small socket, and there's a lot of instability. And so what you need to be working on is push-up variations to strengthen the pec major, which is the visible big pec muscle, right? You have the minor underneath. The medial deltoid, you can do lat raises, which are really important. There are different variations of that. And then reinforcing the lats, and that's going to provide all the stability. And then you can think about smaller rotator cuff exercises from there. But everybody does it different, reverse almost. So they start small and go big. You got to go big and stuff like that. Obviously within reason, depending on the case. But bodyweight squats. Dr. Voyer, who was my mentor, he passed away last year. I was immersed in his program for 15 years. He was a brilliant osteopathic doctor and became an orthopedic surgeon to study anatomy
Hmm.
because the cadavers are treated with chemicals, and so the fascia is different. He was a fascial researcher for 40 years. Notable patients of his were like Tiger Woods, that he worked with Tiger from 2018 to 21, going through coming back from his latest disc fusion, which is custom, by the way. And he needed it because he was like a Navy SEAL, training like a Navy SEAL, right? And so jumping out of helicopters and lots of running, lots of heavy lifting. I've seen him work out in person before he was, in 2013, one of my first jobs was in South Beach. It was at Equinox before I opened Golf and Body. And I was like, holy cow. And I wasn't even into orthopedics at the time. I was like, man, I tell you what, he is in for some big trouble.
Okay, so running is something that I'm always. He had a lot of knee surgeries. A lot of people like is running good for you? Is it bad for you? Like what?
Terrible,
Terrible,
terrible for
right?
you. Yeah. So a couple things, right? You have a pelvis, right? And so, like for instance, if I have a car that isn't properly balanced, the tires, and if I go 100,000 miles with it being out of balance, which normally everybody is, you're gonna have meniscus issues. A lot of them have hip replacements, hip resurfacing surgeries, that kind of stuff. If there is a rotation, because most people, like, have you ever heard of a length leg discrepancy where one leg seems a little bit longer than the other?
Sure.
A lot of people heard about that. It's a pelvis issue. It's only 8% of the population have an actual femur that's longer or anything anatomical like that. And so it's a pelvis issue. And what does that do? That creates an imbalancement, and it also trains you to be slower. So then you train your nervous system to be slow for long periods of time, and that doesn't make you very explosive. If you really,
Hmm.
if you said, hey, how do I get my swing speed slower? I'd say do a lot of long distance running and biking as often as possible, and that's the result you're going to get.
Counterintuitive. Um, okay, so let's do a thought experiment here. Let's say a junior golfer is quarantined to his basement for the next like 6 months, or he goes to jail and he's got no access to any sort of equipment. He's got a yoga mat and like a little room that he can work out in. What would you suggest so that when he comes out of that experience that he's going to be bigger, stronger, or just a better golfer? What would be the exercises? If this episode is hitting home, please take a second to subscribe and leave a quick review. The more love the podcast gets, the more access we get to the world's top coaches, and that means better insights and better episodes for you. And now, back to the episode.
Push-up squats, hip bridges.
Push-ups, okay, and then you're saying varying different
Yeah,
push-ups, so
you can
close
do
grip,
varies.
wide
Yeah, yeah.
grip.
Yeah, because a lot of like I don't think you should do anything in the gym that looks like a golf swing. It can even mess up your kinematic sequencing. If you want to work on swinging a golf club faster, you should just use your driver because hardware and software are not always one and the same. So if you get stronger, there's specific brain exercises you can use to upgrade and teach your brain how to use the new hardware a little bit better. And so that's a little bit more technical. But to answer your question, those three movements are okay. The glutes are very important because they manage a lot of the sacrum bone right here. It's like in a sea of tissue. There's so many ligaments over here, okay? And ligaments are like the structure of a building, okay? They help sway and disperse energy. The intelligence are constantly communicating with the brain and the fascia and stuff like that. And that helps actually reset a lot of the ligament tension when you do hip bridges correctly. We've done the testing in our advanced pelvis courses before and after hip bridges, and it actually really does make a difference.
Okay, so for those audio listeners, so you said push-ups, you said body weight squats, I believe, and hip bridges. How would you describe a hip bridge for someone that's not familiar with that using just words?
So basically, when you get so you're on your back, right? And
Yeah.
you want your feet not too far away or not too close. And you're going to have your arms across your shoulders. Your eyes are going to be looking low, and you're feeling as though you're creating length in your spine as you're doing a hip bridge. Because what you're doing is that you're kind of creating this sort of ligament tension to maintain the spacing in the vertebrae. Now, as you get to the top, you're tucking your tail underneath. What that does, that disengages what's called the facet joints to create space because the disc is basically the space in between your vertebrae, okay? And it's like a sponge, and you want to be able to shunt water and blood to the area so you're able to rehydrate the disc. And what happens when it's dehydrated, then you start developing degeneration and stenosis and stuff like that. So to answer your question, you're tucking your tail at the top major, and you're
So you're
squeezing your
pushing your
butt,
butt up. So you've
pushing
got
your
your
butt
hands
as hard as you
across.
can.
So
Yeah,
you got your hands across, so you're literally just the point of contact on the ground is your 2 feet and the back of your head as you push your
yeah.
butt up to the ceiling as high as it can in a controlled manner.
Yeah, you're driving your heels to China. I mean, your heels are going down and you're tucking your tail. And when you get to the top, and here's a little cue that makes a major difference, then you're feeling as though you're rolling each individual vertebrae to the floor without touching and then back up. And so you're reinforcing the glutes, then you're sort of playing this ligament accordion, and it's not compressive to the spine. Those little minor details really do make a difference. Even the eyes looking down, you're creating fascial tension because the eyes, they connect to the fascia of the brain, which is called the dura mater, which attaches to the first cervical vertebrae called the atlas.
Interesting. Okay, so just to sum that up, you're saying do a bunch of push-ups in varying hand positions to
Hmm.
work different parts of the shoulder. That's strengthening the shoulder, which is one of the most common ones. Is I'm assuming that's the left shoulder for right-handed golfers. Is that the one that
Yeah.
usually gets injured?
I don't, there's not a ton of shoulder injuries in golf that I've seen. I've seen kids that are hypermobile that, if like most kids, they haven't been through it. They don't have adult problems, right? They don't have, maybe go to school and get a good grade or something like that. But most of them have pretty good flexibility, but poor posture. And so they need reinforcement to start restructuring because, geez, they're always on their phones or in the computer and they look like a bunch of young grandpas out there, you know?
Right. Okay, so the push-ups are to create shoulder strength, shoulder stability, and to help with posture. You've got the body weight squats, which is strengthening the glutes, the hamstrings, the legs all around. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's a little bit more overall. Just there's other specific variations to those squats. Dr. Voigt calls it a gravity squat, where you're basically tucking your tail. I'm a huge believer in knees over toes, because most of the knee injuries happen knees over toes. So why don't we train it in a controlled environment? And that study was only done in 1973 in a total of six college students, and it was never refuted and published in PT journals.
Okay, so let's say it again. So your knees over toes. So to
Yeah.
make sure, so you're creating a stable, basically, lower leg to foot.
Yeah, you're tucking your tail underneath, right? Just kind of like what you're doing with almost a scooping motion.
Yeah.
Most people don't have the ankle mobility to have the legs close together, so you can almost have a sumo squat where you're pushing out at 45 degrees, you're tucking your tail, and then you're actively driving the crown of the head away from your pelvis, which is an anchor. And the best exercise for the spine is axial extension, like that, because you're constantly trying to rehydrate those discs all the time because gravity is compressive. And
Interesting.
that's why Guy called it the gravity squat. And the lower
Okay.
abs, it's challenging on the lower abs too.
You've mentioned rehydrate quite a bit when it comes to your joints and your ligaments. In addition to stretching them out, which makes sense, you're making room. I mean, if you're working out, if I don't know, if you're doing a bicep curl, you're ripping the muscle, you're throwing blood in there to repair it. It makes sense that any sort of activation or any sort of engagement of any of your body is going to encourage the fluids to get there. What else can we do? Is it simply is it as simple as just drinking more water? Is it collagen? Is it like what else can we do in addition to some of these activation exercises to make sure that everything is lubricated and working well?
Look, I mean, that's a very good question. I haven't, okay, apart from exercise, definitely hydration, clean water. There are two kinds of water. One's called intracellular. Well, we'll just say the body does it shunts water for different purposes. Okay, intracellular means that the water needs to go to the cell for survival, digestive process, organ function, that kind of stuff. And then you have extracellular water, which hydrates the connective tissues such as tendons, ligaments, and the fascia. Now, if there's not enough water for both, it's going to go to the cell. It's going to want to keep us alive. And because, if you have back pain, you could probably you're still, it's not a life-threatening thing, but if your liver doesn't work, that's a problem.
Hmm.
With that being said, collagen is great. I really like collagen. Bone broth is awesome. Making sure you're drinking a lot of water is great, and adequate movement, and doing stuff that you're off the bench and stuff like that also help pump the GI tract. And because you also have to remember that we are what we absorb, right? So the GI tract absorbs the nutrients, and that does it's for efficient repair in our body.
You're saying off the bench. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, getting up and standing up, and you're moving around, and it keeps
Gotcha.
things moving. You get what I mean? Versus
While
if
you're working
maybe,
out, yeah.
yeah, maybe if you're doing a standing press, you just do it standing instead of seated. Things like that. Uh, you know, push-ups can be good and bad for posture. They're important for stability, but you also have to do like stretching for the pecs and that kind of stuff. It's like if you lengthen, then you have to strengthen, in my opinion.
Okay, so we've touched on a few of them, but back injuries, back pain, I mean, there's so much that goes into this. What are some of the biggest misconceptions when it comes to back health and golf?
Man, I tell you what, where do I start? I just don't think the exercise is specific enough because I remember taking Geese. He did one course. It was an 8-point course. With it's called Soma Golf Therapy and Soma Golf Training. and it was soft tissue work for golf-related injuries, and it was also physical training for golfers. Some high-level guys were there. I mean, this is years ago, maybe 8 or 9 years ago. I mean, Chris Como was there. That's where we met. And I was like, holy cow, you're a golf pro, you're doing all this stuff because there was like doctors and PTs and, osteopaths and stuff like that and high level trainers and stuff. And I would say the misconception is that whatever they think to prevent back pain is actually one of the reasons why they cause it. Because a lot of people are like, oh, I'm just going to go and do some deadlifts to help my back. But, there's a lot more to it. What if you have lumbar scoliosis and you don't know? Um, you know, there's a lot of different things. There's breathing mechanics and stuff like that. They are variations of a deadlift that you can do, but again, what's the risk and reward? Do you want to feel good, look good, and move fast and have no pain? Maybe the risk reward isn't there. I would just say it boils down to specificity, and golfers don't warm up well enough or specific enough, and they don't have a cool down routine because the Eldoa essentially it helps recondition the tendons, ligaments, and the fascia to maintain the spacing in the disc. And the Eldoa is a fancy acronym for creating space in a joint segment. It's a French acronym. So when translated to English, it stands. It's the acronym is transferred from Eldoa to LOADS, longitudinal osteoarticular deco-adaptive stretching, which is, just a fancy term for just creating space and a desired vector attention.
Ryan, you said something very interesting that I've never heard before. As golfers, we all know that you're supposed to warm up. Like ideally you're going and you're hitting, 20, 50, 40 balls at the driving range before. Very seldom does that actually happen because most people are just rushing to the course. But then like a little bit of a stretch, club behind your back, you're doing a little something to warm up. That's known. But you're right that the cool down aspect is I've never seen a golfer cool down after a round that doesn't involve just grabbing a beer and a burger or, something unhealthy. Talk to us a little bit more about the importance of a cool down routine. What does that look like? And again, why is that important?
To use a cool down routine, maybe because the tools that I have are really quite effective and unique, like using Eldoas, for instance. There's an Eldoa for every single joint you could possibly think of, with what's called an articular surface. And so, um, if you don't have access to an Eldoa practitioner or anything like that, even just maybe doing some stretching to get things going, maybe even just sitting your butt and having your legs on the wall and just kind of sinking your pelvis into the floor to get the hamstrings a little bit looser. That's it is a loaded subject, but I mean anything you could maybe just going for scheduling massage, doing anything that you could think that's restorative. I've seen a lot of people use those Normatec boots. Just kind of outside my sort of world. If somebody doesn't necessarily have access to the information.
Okay, so it's not as simple as just, doing some stretches
Now,
after a round. It's more to do with restorative cold plunge massage, maybe those boots like you
uh,
mentioned, or
sauna, sauna's
sauna.
the best. Sauna is
Sauna's the
actually the
best.
best. Yeah, I think the benefits of cold plunging are vastly overrated in comparison with sauna.
Interesting.
Um, I'm not saying I'm an expert, and maybe I'm wrong, but I want things moving and new hormones to help with the inflammatory processes. And when you drink, when you're obviously in there, you're going to want to drink a lot of water, and that gets things moving. And in my opinion, I think sauna is king, and then I think um, cold plunging is also maybe I would say second place, but everybody's putting it first.
Do you have a preference? Infrared sauna, dry sauna, wet sauna? Does it matter?
Traditional rocks, it does matter because of temperature. I actually hired a consultant. I was supposed to put a sauna right there where my sim was, and I was put the sim in there, but I had a Pilates room instead. And I hired a consultant. And there was a guy, his name is Scott Herrera, from Dallas, and he's got one of the most amazing saunas you've ever seen because he trains a lot of the NHL and the NBA players is like all custom or whatever. And he's like, hey, talk to this guy, blah, blah. And, according to the experts, the traditional is the best. I'm certainly not an expert in that stuff, but it's something that you should be um, definitely doing every week, especially because it's been, I wouldn't say conclusive evidence, but there's a lot of evidence producing like risk of cardiovascular disease decreasing, stuff like that.
You'd mentioned something about a song that I wasn't familiar with, which is that it also releases hormones and other things, which I guess makes sense that there's almost a response when you're in extreme heat or any sort of extreme situation. It's going to force your body to produce things that wouldn't normally in day-to-day life. So that's interesting. I hadn't heard that before.
Yeah, I mean, hormones are like the messengers of the body. I mean, you're going to want to, there's a seesaw, right? It's called the parasympathetic nervous system. And say you have the fulcrum of the seesaw, and then you have rest and digest, which is parasympathetic. And then you have, sorry, it's called an autonomic nervous system, not parasympathetic. So you have rest and digest and fight or flight, sympathetic, right? And so there are hormones that are associated with rest and digest, and then you have stress hormones that are associated with stress, and you want to try and get that seesaw over to the rest and digest as much as you can. And this can be from good stress, such as exercise, because the response to that is a parasympathetic response, versus just like not getting any sleep and running a marathon that's going to put your body in a state of extreme amounts of stress and deteriorate muscle tissue, and your testosterone gone, you know. And that's a
Interesting.
problem. Why do you think TRT and they say geez, the average 18-year-old in America now has a testosterone level of a 60-year-old man. That's not good, dude.
Why is that? Aside from all the chemicals in the food and all the rest of the
That's
crap
exactly
that's
right. No, that's plenty. That's a plenty explanation for it, because a lot of these say plastics, they have estrogen mimicking chemicals like xenoestrogens and stuff like that. And and a lot of these kids are obese, and blood sugar management is a major stressor. Like high fructose corn syrup and all the stuff. Look, I don't want to get you kicked off the air, but they poison our food like on
yeah,
purpose to
yeah.
to make us sick, to get us on a drug.
It's it certainly doesn't seem to be in the realm
Yeah.
of the tin foil hats anymore. It seems to be pretty fact. Okay. So Ryan, do you have kids or are
No,
you
no kids. Two French bulldog.
nice. Okay. Let's say that you get to be the cool uncle and that gets to train your nephew or your niece for 5 or 10 summers. What would you be doing then? What would be the program? What would be important for you to make sure that you're giving them the best chance to succeed in a career in golf?
I would probably just keep things very, very simple. I think complexity is great for understanding, but protocol should be simple and broken up into different cycles. Since I'm not a generalist, I'm highly specific in my programs. Just generally speaking, making sure that they're doing a lot of, back work and stuff like that. And depending on the kid, it really depends. But they should be out there playing golf, learning how to warm up and cool down, and just swinging the golf club well. I've seen players get slower and injured just by lifting too much weights. And I love lifting weights, but I'm a weekend warrior. I'm kind of, like I was telling you before, I'm like one of those Nassau scratch golfers. It's not like, out there playing tournaments and stuff like that. So if I'm a little bit tight, whatever, I go shoot 78, you know?
Yeah. Well, for those that can't see you, you look good in a shirt. So I mean, it's one of those things where you're balancing the vanity muscles with the with the golf muscles. So there's always a
Yeah, yeah.
trade-off. All right,
Listen,
Ryan,
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
you got
Good.
the ear of a lot of golf parents right now. What do you want them to know? Like, what would you tell like if you could put a billboard up there and kind of speak to every junior golfer, every junior golf parent, what would you want them to know?
Well, I would definitely say be careful what you see on social media. It's a highlight reel. It is to grab attention, not necessarily what real training. The day in and day out boring habits are what get you the results. And get your kids in a Pilates, you get them a Pilates instructor, and if the budget is tight, go take a class and get a membership. And the truth is, that's going to transfer and put so much less risk in their golf careers than you can ever imagine, versus paying a lot of money for a guy to put them at risk. Even if they go to Division 1, because the kids make it Division 1, oh my goodness, and that's really amazing. But it's a recipe for injuries in those, because they hire low-paid interns that don't see the screening, don't do the proper screenings, don't have X-rays of the spine. I look at all X-rays of the spine before I train somebody, or I just assume they have scoliosis. And there's pretty, to the trained eye, they're pretty obvious signs of issues. And I would just say Pilates, 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 man. And it doesn't sound glamorous or fun or what all their friends are doing, but guess what? You may just outwork and outlast the people just doing the stuff that is trendy, you know?
I lied. I got one more question for you here. If you had a magic wand and you could just erase one exercise or one misconception or one social media TikTok post off of the world to kind of help save backs, like what's the one thing that is just, I think, doing a lot of harm?
Listen, I think it just boils down to the deadlift. I'm not an anti. Listen, I used to deadlift all the time. Listen, when I took a break off of golf through college, like I did mixed martial arts. That's a contact sport. I deadlifted really heavy, and I was very, very strong. But I'd have to say excessively heavy deadlifting. And if you must deadlift, keep the rep ranges between 12 to 20 reps, where you're just not putting the spine at risk. Like why? There's so many other options. You can do like hip bridges, even heavier if you want. There's minimal risk of that with the barbell across a pad across your hips, and you can do a bridge. You can do 45-degree extensions to reinforce the glutes with minimal risk. You can do different hamstring exercises, what's called Nordic ham curls, which is minimal risk, and you're getting just insane amount of benefits out of that with little to no risk. So just break it down. Why you don't need to do. Are you training or are you training your ego? That's the question you have to ask yourself.
Well said. Ryan, those listeners and audience right now, if they want to get into your ecosystem, if they want to, you've got a great podcast, you've got your socials, but what's the best way for people to find you, work with you?
Golfbuddy.com is you can put your information in there, and I normally reach out with you between 1 to 2 business days, and yeah, it's pretty simple. I have a little YouTube channel. I put some good videos up there. I just have everything under Golf and Body or at Golf and Body. And it's some useful information. And it's just so we sign NDAs so there's only the information that I'm kind of tiptoeing around what I can show and what I can't. So it's protected legally. And so like the Eldo is like, and it's hard to find a lot of information on it to the degree that I'm talking about because the students who take it are legally bound to that contract. And so if you want more information, you can go to Golf and Body and then we can get it going. Golfandbody.com.
Ryan, it's been a pleasure. You're definitely an expert. I mean, you're currently working with the number one junior in the world. You work with a bunch of PGA guys. You know what you're talking about. You're dedicated to back health for golfers, which is it's pertinent. I mean, everybody's worried about their back health, and everybody that plays the sport wants to continue to play the sport, and anybody that has a kid that's putting in 36 whole days over and over again, you want to make sure that they're doing the right thing. So appreciate the wisdom, appreciate all the insights, and yeah, it was a pleasure having you on.
Thanks for having me. See you next time.
Thanks for tuning in. As a fellow golf parent, I know how much this journey matters. If this podcast helped you even 1%, please consider following and reviewing it. It's the number one way to grow the community and keep bringing you elite insights week after week. And while you're here, check out the show description for exclusive discounts from our sponsors, handpicked to help your junior golfer train smarter and play better.